The year is 525 BC. The sands of Pelusium are about to witness the end of an era. For centuries, the Egyptian empire stood undefeated, protected by massive armies and divine right. Their fortress at Pelusium was the ultimate shield, a gateway no enemy could breach. But the Egyptians had one absolute law, a law higher than the Pharaoh himself. Every living cat was a sacred vessel of Bastet. To harm one was punishable by eternal damnation. Across the searing desert, a dark storm was brewing. The mighty Persian Empire, hungry for conquest, had arrived. He knew his army couldn't break the walls of Pelusium by sheer force alone. Arrows were nocked. Swords were drawn. The air was thick with tension. They waited for the charge. But the Persians simply stood there. The great king raises his hand, and the world holds its breath. Cambyses knew that to defeat a God-fearing nation, you hold their gods hostage. Revealing the horrifying truth of his psychological master plan. Every Persian soldier held a sacred feline as a symbolic presence. They even painted the divine image of the ancient deity upon their shields. The general's blood ran cold. The impregnable army was completely paralyzed by a single sight. To fire a single arrow meant striking a sacred animal. The punishment was eternal damnation. Among the guards was a young archer, his mind shattered under the weight of faith. The tension was unbearable. Just a tiny slip of the fingers. A jolt of extreme fear. The arrow leaves the bow. Time seemed to stop. Thousands of men held their breath. The arrow missed. It didn't strike a god, but it sealed their fate.
In that single, desperate shot, he had fired a curse.
First one, then dozens. Weapons fell from trembling hands. They didn't surrender to King Cambyses. They surrendered to the fear of their own afterlife. The banner of the Pharaoh, a symbol of 3,000 years of power, finally touched the dirt. The Persians advanced without firing a single shot. The path was paved with cowardice. The impenetrable city of Pelusium had fallen. King Cambyses wanted to break its soul. Treasures accumulated over millennia were stripped away in a matter of hours. The high priest of Bastet, once the voice of the gods, was now collared like an animal. But the cruelest irony came from the very creatures the Egyptians had sacrificed their empire for. The sacred cats roamed freely through the ruins. They didn't weep for the fallen soldiers. They just watched, with terrifying, animal indifference. The old gods were silent. Their statues cracked and crumbled in the heat of a new era. Cambyses drank to his victory. A victory won through psychological dominance. The army that had laid down its weapons to protect the divine was now marched into eternal slavery. Deep underground, the general covered his ears, trying to block out the sounds of the dying city. He scratched at the stone, a caged lion stripped of his pride. For those who fell in the sand, their bodies were left unburied. Without proper mummification, an Egyptian soul could not survive in the afterlife. To surrender sacred land was an unforgivable sin. Their souls did not travel to the field of reeds. Their hearts were weighed against the feather of truth, and they were found heavy with cowardice. The high priest lived out his days in slavery, praying to a sky that never answered back.
He finally understood. When a nation values symbols over survival, it engineers its own destruction.
The Persian Empire swallowed Egypt. The era of the native pharaohs was permanently crippled. For nearly 200 years, the proud people of the Nile bowed to foreign masters. All because an enemy understood how to turn their greatest virtue into their deadliest weapon. Today, the ruins of Pelusium lie quiet under the Egyptian sun, a silent reminder of a psychological war. And the descendants of Bastet? They still roam the streets of Egypt, still revered, still untouchable, still guarding secrets. The files on Pelusium are now closed. But the obsession with animals hid a much darker, much more profitable secret. Everyone thinks ancient Egyptians loved animals. But behind the golden altars, a multi-million-dollar black market was thriving. An industrial-scale slaughterhouse beneath the sands. Next time on the Shadows of Kemet. DEE, Heretical Pharaoh. Subscribe before the darkness consumes you.